I'm Matt.
And I'm Nate.
And this is Not Quite Religious, a podcast where a Christian pastor and former evangelical turned atheist have conversations about faith, religion, philosophy, and life while drinking coffee.
Welcome to episode 25, which is actually 25. So we're like, our numbers now correspond to the number of recordings on the thing. Where today we're going to talk about new coffee, Keene, New Hampshire, and probably some other things, but this is another week where neither one of us really had a topic to come prepared because of life, I think.
Yeah, I think we did okay with the last one anyway, not having a topic.
Yeah.
It worked out pretty good. So the coffee this week, Nate brought it. It's Mary Lou's coffee out of Eastern Massachusetts, but you have a story about it.
So first off, what do you think of it?
Oh, I just had one sip.
Okay. All right. So here's the thing. Mary Lou's coffee opened in, I think Braintree was the first or second one. So my hometown. And all we had before that was Dunkin' Donuts. And Mary Lou's opened up. And it really was the best coffee in town at the time. Like the line in the morning would be around the block, like blocking traffic on one of the main roads in Braintree for people to get this coffee. And I had a girlfriend when I was 16 who worked there, so I got free coffee. It was awesome. So it was on sale, just like for sale in Western Massachusetts Stop and Shop. And I had plans for another coffee, but wasn't able to get to the small little roaster that I wanted to get to. So figured, what the hell? And I said, it's either going to be awful or it's going to be fantastic. And my opinion is it's on the lower side of the coffees we've drank.
Yeah, it's not wonderful.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that grainy diner coffee taste, right. So it's not awful.
Yeah.
But it's probably the lowest.
Yeah, I think so.
That we've had here.
Yeah.
On
John
the podcast.
Would be very disappointed.
Yeah. John would be disappointed. John,
like I said, high hopes from memories, and I think probably, so this opened in 1986.
Yeah.
Was the first one. So my guess is in 1986, this was like revolutionary.
Well, in 1986, I'm not sure. I think that's just when, like, snobby kind of coffee things were starting to happen.
Yeah.
Like, I think people.
Well, and like Mary Lou was a real person who went out of her way to find a better roast for the Eastern Seaboard.
Yeah. So I'm gonna call John's scale into question again, because why not? We don't have a topic for this episode.
Yeah, right.
So let's just
and
go
he's
with
not
anything.
here, so he can just continue.
Yeah. Hi, John. So here's the thing. Like, I would give this a low rating.
Yeah.
I'd give it about a 6.
That's where I was going to fall to. Maybe 5.5.
Maybe 5.5. Which means, what is this, John?
Right.
Like, if
he'd say it's a 2.
But
then, like, where does Folgers?
Then what is Folgers? Exactly.
Right. And if you put that at a 0, like, that's not the worst cup of coffee I've ever had.
To me, a 0 would make me instantly barf. That's where That's where my scale goes.
Yeah, it's like
you're like,
this is
I
rancid.
drink and I'm just like, I'm sick now. I have food poisoning from this coffee. That's a 0.
Yeah.
So, this is a solid 5. If you said, hey, would you rather have Mary Lou's or Maxwell House? It'd be like, Mary Lou's, but if you're giving me pancakes, I'll take Maxwell House. just for
the nostalgia, so you can feel like you're at Bickford's.
Right.
Did Bickford's exist in Penn? Was Bickford's a thing, or was that just a Northeast? Because I know it's a Northeast thing.
I don't know what I thought.
It was like the Northeast IHOP / Waffle House.
I was thinking of something else,
okay.
But I knew that that's where you were going because of the context of the joke.
Yeah. No, it was like the 24-hour breakfast joint that you go to after the prom or after partying or whatever.
What was the name of the tool company on Home Improvement?
Tim Allen?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
That's what I was thinking of when you said that.
It could also be Bickford's. I haven't seen Tool Time in forever. I guess Tool Time is the show inside the show.
It is. which is meta and funny, and I don't know if in the 90s it was self-referential, but
I think it was.
It seems so appropriate now.
I think it was. It was like, I'm not a huge sitcom fan, although I don't know if I can say that anymore because we've been watching Better Off Ted, which I don't know if you've seen Better Off Ted. Oh, did it? That's like the 5th time I've watched it as a sitcom. It's about this guy, Ted, who works at Viridian Dynamics, and every episode they have a fake Viridian Dynamics ad.
Yeah.
And it's like a really, really evil corporation. And it's like these good people trying to navigate it. So I guess I'll just say I don't know if I can say I don't like sitcoms, but like when I think of a sitcom, I think of like Friends and laugh tracks.
Yeah.
And like I don't like that, but I remember really enjoying Home Improvement.
Yeah. It wasn't my thing. I remember there was this show on on Saturday night in the place where there would usually be sitcoms, there was like a Ohio lottery show. And everybody on that show, and for some reason the contestants, they would ask name where you from and then favorite TV show was one of the questions every week. And it seemed like, and this was in the 90s, everybody was like Home Improvement.
Huh. No Family Matters?
No, I mean, every once in a while there was like a Law and Order, I think. Was that a thing in the 90s?
No Full House? You would have thought Full House would have beat it.
It probably made it a couple times, but it just, like, all I remember is like everybody loves Full House. What am I missing out on? But now it seems like you could do a sociological study. It's like rural Ohioans going on an Ohio game show to play the lottery. What show do you think those people would watch?
Right, yeah.
In the 90s, without streaming.
So,
they're watching Home Improvement.
For me and the other people, it takes me like 3 seconds to play the lottery. I go in when I play the lottery, like when Mega Millions is like $1 bajillion or whatever. I'm like, I'll take 3 quick picks. Mm-hmm. Like, is that the end of the show? how did this show last?
No, they made a game show out of it. So it was. I don't really remember. I couldn't actually tell you.
Okay.
I was hoping that like something like it existed in Massachusetts when
I've never seen
when
it.
you were a kid.
Jeopardy is the closest thing that I...
Yeah.
There was like the high school Jeopardy.
Yeah.
The school's Matt's Wits. That's like, I remember watching.
Yeah, we did that.
Okay.
There was that too, like the local schools, and actually some of the kids from my school went to it. And,
nice.
That was cool.
Did you call them mathletes?
No, but it was the same thing. Yeah. It's the same kind of crowd.
I was a mathlete.
Let's just say it wasn't our most attractive or athletic kids.
I mean, I also played sports, but I was definitely a mathlete.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
But I'm really trying to remember anything really about the structure of that game, but I don't. I think it was like you had a y-axis and you had a x-axis. I think it was like Ohio up and down and like lottery on the horizontal or something like that. And then you would pick a letter or you would like do a corresponding thing like Battleship. Like I want an HT or whatever.
To win that number.
And then something would come up and it would be like a dollar number. And then you would decide whether you wanted to like keep going because one of the boxes was lose all your money or something. I think that's what it was like.
So it's like it's the show with the whammy.
Yeah, it was like the show with the whammy, except they had boxes.
Yeah.
And
you got to choose. So it was like Jeopardy meets Whammy.
Yeah, except with the whammy show, I think that was called Press Your Luck.
Yes,
I think there was some skill involved because there were like questions that determined how many spins you got.
Yeah, I think so.
Where with the Ohio Lottery, it was just like, I want that box. And they're like, oh, you have $1 million. Or like, do you want to stop at $1 million? And I'm like, yeah, I'll stop there. Do you have a 500 million box? No, okay. Yeah, we'll take it. But
I think there was a Price is Right game like that too.
Yeah, like the hole punches.
Yeah.
I'm surprised at how good I am remembering this kind of stuff. I was 28 years old when I discovered that Price is Right was a commercial.
Huh. I actually never really thought about it. I guess it is though. Right? Like every single prize, they're like, welcome to the Whirlpool 2758. The fastest.
And then your mind has to think about what you think it would be worth. So you're thinking about that product and like...
That's interesting.
Right. So, and who watches Price is Right?
Kids who stay homesick from school in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, and elderly people who are retired, because that's when it comes on. It doesn't come on.
Right, yeah.
It's not a primetime show. It's an early morning show. So people are like, oh, I really need some Cascade. I need to...
Yeah.
I need to clean my sink. Or, oh, we're out of Fruit Loops, or whatever it is that they're...
Yeah. It's when I first found out that you have to pay taxes on all those prizes...
Yeah.
Like, like the vast majority of people don't keep any of the prizes because it's like 40% tax. So often the show will just buy them back from you. Like game shows that offer prizes, they're just like, all right, we'll buy it back, and then you.
So the reward is you get to tell your friends you were on a game show.
Essentially, I mean, you get like something, but yeah, think about it. You win like a $50,000 car, and now you have a 40% windfall tax on it.
Yeah.
Well, you got 20 grand lying around to get that, like.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Did our podcast just evolve into like
we're now doing TV?
We're now doing financials and how taxes work.
I guess so.
So yesterday I posted about an event that happened in Keene, New Hampshire, but it didn't happen to me. It actually happened to John. And
for those who don't know or just started listening, John was a guest a month or 2 months ago.
Yeah,
on the podcast. He was guest episodes for 2 episodes.
Yeah, let's say 5 episodes ago.
Sure,
6 episodes ago. Yeah, so he sent me the story yesterday, and basically he was sitting on his porch, probably I'm guessing like 7:30 in the morning, drinking coffee, and work had started around the neighborhood, and there were some roofers across the street on somebody's house, and the music that was playing was Gloria Esteban, the 80s Latin kind of dance pop, shake your body, move your body kind of person, which doesn't all fit with like guys named like roofers named Steve and Bill, you know, and John was telling me about, or he texted me like their conversation, which was typical roofers. Hey, stupid, like, why are you just standing there? Go pick up a shovel. And the other one was like, hey, F you, Bill. And like, meanwhile in the background, it's like, rhythm is gonna get you. Rhythm is, you know. and the further I get away from it, like, the less funny it is. But like at the time that I received the text, my thought was, this is the kind of stuff I love. And this is the kind of conversation I wish we had more often in life. Not just on the podcast, but like, these are the little joys that can get us through our days.
Yeah.
Like true. The little stuff.
Yeah.
So that was my tiny armchair philosophical takeaway from that. Was like, I lived off that dumb story for at least until lunch.
Well, and I saw it last night.
I'm still talking about today.
I saw it last night, and we had a little bit of a rougher day as people are getting better in our house. There's just a lot of things to go on, and so I'm like focusing on stress and mental health, and right procedures, and what do you do, and working with IHT, which is in-home therapy for those who don't know, to like come up with systems and structures, and it's just like mind-numbing. And then on the side, I'm doing my business, and we just expanded, and you can now purchase stuff directly from the website, but that's got like kinks where people are like, it won't let me ship, and like I forgot to set something properly, so there's all these stresses, and then I'm like, Keene. So like it was able to like bring me out of the stressful bubble of my life and be like, yeah, I remember Keene. That's a wacky place. And like visually seeing that, these like gruff, it's like stereotypically roofers are like the lowest of the low of construction workers. Oh, like no one aspires to be a roofer. I want to apologize to any roofers who are out there who did aspire. Like, that's why I'm saying stereotypically, as I have friends in construction, like roofers are looked at as like the alcoholic drug addicts who can't do anything else. Yeah,
if construction is a ladder, they're towards the bottom.
Yeah, and I mean, some of them, I don't want to be flippant about alcohol and drug addiction. Like, some of them, like, that's where you start off. Right. It's like, you need the least amount of skill to get up really high and hammer some shingles in. Right. Again, oversimplifying, but just imagine, like, these gruff, hungover, like, got their Dunkin' Donuts, their hard hat, which is reluctant because they're tough enough to not wear a hard. And I don't even know if New Hampshire you need to wear hard hats, because I know you don't need to wear motorcycle helmets.
I don't know that you need to do anything in New Hampshire.
It's true.
When they say live free or die, they mean it up there.
Yeah. I used to visit Keene quite a bit. We'd go up Route 63 from Western Mass, and then it's a beautiful road, so there'd be a lot of people biking in the summers, and I would legit see like motorcyclists like take off their helmet as they hit the New Hampshire state line.
Right. Nobody cares.
Just like, I'm like, at least pull over, man. Like, that seems really risky.
Right.
But yeah, so like, I'm picturing that scene where like, come on, everybody, let's do this samba.
Yeah.
Right? And the guy's like, hey, Bill, just get your ass up here.
Exactly, with that sort of accent, because they grew up around there. They're not from.
They're not right. They didn't.
At best, they're from Connecticut, like
right.
in terms of distance that they cross.
More likely, some small town in New Hampshire, and they hit the big city of Keene.
Right. Yeah, and the thing about Keene, for our listeners that don't know, is it is the big city in that, like, southwestern New Hampshire is where Keene is.
Yeah.
And pretty much New Hampshire is, southeast New Hampshire is where everybody lives. And if you don't live in southeastern New Hampshire, then, like,
so that's
you're out in the middle of
Manchester.
Nowhere. Concord, Manchester, Nashua,
Yeah.
Seacoast, Portsmouth. Yeah. That's the population center. And a lot of those people work in Boston.
Right.
So that's why that part of New Hampshire's heavily populated, and actually would probably surprise people when they think of New Hampshire to know that those places, Manchester, Nashua, Concord, like, a lot of people actually live there.
Yeah.
It's pretty busy stuff. But you get outside of that, you get west and north of that, it is everything you stereotypically think that New Hampshire is. And then in the middle of that is this place, Keene, with its quirky... The people in New Hampshire have told me, like, Keene is where the liberals live.
Well, I mean, it's got the big college. And by big, I mean, I think it's like 6,000 students.
Right, which is
so true, a mid-sized college.
True relative to New Hampshire, and, like, its its next closest neighbor is Brattleboro, where I live, which is super hippie and progressive. So, relative to New Hampshire, Keene has that feel. But then at the same time, like, if you're from... where we're recording this podcast, like Amherst, Northampton, Smith College, like Amherst, UMass, progressive as progressive gets possibly in the entire country, and you go to Keene, and those people are like, hey, this is a really progressive place. You're like, actually, it has more Steves and Bills cussing on roofs than it does.
I mean, I did feel it was a little progressive until they burned down their pumpkin festival, which is like, which is like actually a highlight of discovering Keene. Was discovering we're just going to talk about Keene, which I guess I said we were going to. So Keene used to have the largest pumpkin carving like festival in the world. Like,
they lined the streets with pumpkins,
like Guinness World Record, and every year would try to. So you would go, and the town would give you a free pumpkin, and they're like, carve a jack-o'-lantern and add it to our sculpture. And it was like the businesses had tents up. It was like this giant Halloween party, and you got a free jack-o'-lantern. And all you had to do at the end was like put it on top of this pile so that they could break the Guinness World Record again, which was theirs from the year previous. And then some Stephen Bills, I guess from outside Keene. Like, it got so big that people from other parts of the country were like coming, and they decided to set the whole thing on fire.
That was the college students that did that.
Was it the college?
They
students?
were partying. So just their part of the street was on fire. I was actually...
You were at that one?
I was at that one, and I didn't know till I got home that there was a fire.
Wow.
But the town was like, this can only escalate. Like, next year they're going to be like, okay, so we lit Winchester Street on fire. Let's move up to... let's move on to Main Street. So we didn't go down that far of the street to where the college was to even know about that. But they did try to bring it back before COVID, and it took place at the fairgrounds.
Okay. But it's not the same.
It's not
it was
the
like
same
they
thing.
shut down the whole downtown center.
Yeah.
And like all the businesses had their doors open. I just remember like walking in and out, and like, you know, instead of the regular menu, they're like $2 tacos, $1 beer. And you're just like, this is amazing. I'm just going to like hang out with my family and...
Yeah. So Keene's like the quintessential northern New England town.
Yeah.
And so to have that, which they all have fall festivals, like all northern New England town has some kind of fall festival, but to have like the biggest pumpkin festival in the world, like in this random northern New England town, it was just, if fall is your favorite season, then if they ever do it again, you have to go.
Yeah,
even if you live in Idaho or whatever, like New England Falls, going to a town that is a quintessential northern New England town where they celebrate fall, and going there during like in October.
Yeah, and not like it's huge city. Like
No.
I got nothing against Boston. I grew up there. I really like it, but like a pumpkin festival in Boston wouldn't feel the same as a pumpkin festival in Keene, New Hampshire.
No, it'd be
so when we're talking about Keene, and like it's not a big place. Like the big draw is they have like, besides the college, like a movie theater and a Five Guys and like a little strip mall. Like there's a Target, but when you get like on the way from Amherst to Keene, it's woods.
right.
And like when you get out of Keene, it's woods.
It's that way in New Hampshire too.
Yeah.
Like through the way, like from Concord, from Manchester to Keene is woods.
Yeah, it's like an hour drive of nothing.
Right.
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So to the people that live in that part of that state, Keene is Boston.
Right.
Right. So I don't know what else to say about Keene. You made me sort of love it again. in my own little.
You gonna move back?
I don't know. It's its own little quirky enclave.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what attracted me to it. The first time I went to Keene, I went to this coffee shop called Brew Bakers, which has since moved and expanded and is doing really well. But at the time, it was a really tiny coffee shop, and they basically just had like backboard seating. Like they didn't have like tables.
Yeah.
They just you've been there, but it's hard to describe.
It's like the old school diner where you had like a pew essentially, but not a pew.
Like a pew.
But it went the entire length of the restaurant.
Right.
Just some tables there.
Right, and it just felt really cramped in there all the time, and because there's good coffee and people came, and it was actually a pretty good atmosphere. But the first time I went there, everybody was crowded around this like small television. So I'm dating myself a little bit because I think this was back in like 2010, and they were watching one of their coworkers participate in a latte making contest in Boston on TV in Keene, New Hampshire, and I was like, well, this is my town. Little did I know that it was surrounded by that. Once you're in Keene, you're just in Keene.
Yeah.
You're surrounded by nothing.
Yeah.
It's just its own little.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so weird and charming and hard to live there, because it's like very hermetically sealed community.
Yeah. So I sort of feel that way about like where I live, except I'm like, well, no, because we got Holyoke like 20 minutes away, and then there's Springfield, and then there's Hartford. But there's parts like, so in Belchertown, one town north is Amherst, and then one town north of that is Hadley, and one town north of that, or like northwest, is like Northampton. But outside of that, like if I traveled south, I get to Holyoke and Springfield and Hartford. But if I travel in any other direction, it's like pretty barren.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Berkshires are pretty much all there is north of here.
Yeah, well, and east of here, Berkshires are west of Northampton.
Right.
And east of here, you got like the Quabbin Reservoir, and like nothing until you hit Worcester.
Uh-huh.
And north, you have nothing until you hit Keene again.
Yeah.
So, and like as you're driving, you're like, oh, I have no cell service. Like, so I Ubered this summer a few times when my business was slower. And I was legit in places in Amherst where I had zero service. And I was like, huh. And it was like the woods. Like, it was not paved. I was like, I'm going to die. Like, this is where I get axe murdered in my Uber drive. And I'm like trying to find this and none of the roads are marked. They're just like all these like diverging, like unpaved, rain-washed roadways. I ended up finding the person, but it was like a half an hour trek where I was like, this wasn't worth the $7 Uber charge. And they were like, yeah, the guy who dropped me off here last night, like it was pouring rain and he was not happy. I was like, yeah, I imagine.
Jumping up in the middle of nowhere.
I'm like, this is like 10 a.m. and it's sunny and I can see like where the puddles have like condensed, and like I would not want to be doing this in the middle of the night.
Right. And the way that Eastern Massachusetts thinks about Western Massachusetts, is like it's the hicks and and then in Amherst it's like the hippies,
right?
But
yeah,
other than Springfield, Amherst,
right west of Worcester,
there's nothing going on.
Yeah, except UMass.
Yeah, I think Eastern Massachusetts definitely looks down on Western.
Yeah, and until they want to go skiing.
Then it's cool.
Yeah, although I mean, do they even come out to Berkshire East, or are they going more towards up north, like Conway, New Hampshire? I guess it's probably a mix of both.
We get a lot of people in Vermont to the to Mount Snow,
yeah,
which is in southern Vermont. And the Green Mountains
right.
are prominent in southern Vermont. We get a lot of people from Connecticut and New York City.
Yeah, makes sense.
So they might just skip on past the Berkshires, and they might do some like leaf peeping in North Adams or whatever, and then
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's funny because the Berkshires were like the place where rich people went until it wasn't.
Right. Yeah, now they keep going north. Eventually, they're just going to be in Montreal.
Yeah, I have a Montreal story, but last Keene story. So I was meeting our friend Dave there. It was like Keene was halfway in between me and him. He's in Concord, and we met at some Mexican restaurant. I forget. It had food that we could both eat. Like I have some dietary restrictions. Yeah, and we were getting a drink, and I asked for a Negroni, which is like kind of a hipster drink, but I love it. Yeah, it's Campari, vermouth, and gin. And, like, it's just, like, one of those, like, sophisticated, like, you're going to get pretty buzzed off one drink. You don't need a lot of them. But it's also, like, because it's pure alcohol, but it's tasty. It's, like, how they figured out during Prohibition how to, like, make alcohol.
I don't even know what it is, but the way you're describing it says this is the perfect alcoholic drink.
Yeah, it comes with, like, one giant ice cube that's probably in a circle just to show off how hip the place is.
I didn't think you could make the drink better, but the more that you talk, the better it gets.
Anyway, so we're at this restaurant, and I order that, and the waiter, he had to be pretty new. He's like, okay, he comes back. He's like, so our regular bartender isn't there, and they don't know how to make it. And I was like, well, it's Campari, vermouth, and gin, and like a twist of orange, and like a cherry if you have it. And he's like, okay. And he comes back. He's like, we don't have Campari. And I was like, okay, like that's sort of a thing. So I order a different hipster drink. I forget. And he comes back. He's like, yeah, we don't have that. And I was like, okay. I was like, how about a Disaronno on the rocks? Which a Disaronno is a liqueur, like nowhere near as strong. But in its amaretto flavor, it's like a nice thing. Sometimes we'll have it as a nightcap, just a little bit with a little bit of ice, and you just sip it straight. And it's kind of like alcoholic candy. And normally you get like a shot's worth. Yeah. You know, it's like $8 and it's 1 ounce of alcohol and 10 ounces of ice, and you just kind of let it melt and sip it. Yeah. This kid comes back and it's a fucking soda glass full of Disaronno. It had to be half a bottle. I think I just swore. We're gonna. And I'm just looking at it, and then like the kid walks away, and Dave's like, "Is it supposed to be that big?" And I'm like, "No, this is the deal of the century." He's like,
So like Keene just lost all of its hipster credentials.
I mean, I don't know. I felt pretty good about getting what was probably essentially 5 drinks.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. I did not. I don't believe I finished and drove. I try not. I shouldn't say I try. I've never driven drunk. So
I try not to. I try not to stab people. but yeah, didn't you use back in the day when you were doing church planning? You used to go to Keene for like
my retreats.
Yeah, for like a week at a time. So
like a weekend, like 3 days.
Yeah,
and I would like hole up in a hotel room, and by hotel I mean. But yeah, I would plan out like the sermon series for the next 6 months and like do graphics and write and like do all that sort of stuff. So Keene was like, because it was close enough that if there was a family emergency, I could get home. Right. But it was far enough away that if someone called, I'm like, I'm out of state. Right. 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 So like, you know, when you say you're out of state, people just assume you mean like far away, not 35 minutes over the border.
Even in New England, they assume that, which they shouldn't.
Right, like Worcester is further away from me than Keene.
Right.
But if I was like, I'm in Worcester, I'm sorry, people were like, well, can you get back here? Like, it's only Worcester. But I'm like, I'm out of state. Like, oh, geez, sorry.
That's funny. I could do that in an even more humorous way, I think, because I can see New Hampshire from my house.
Right. Yeah.
And it takes me 10 minutes to
get
we
like
to
walked.
Massachusetts. Yeah, when you came to visit me in Brattleboro, I was like, hey, let's just walk to New Hampshire.
Yeah.
So I I literally could walk across that, like, walk outside my house for like 2 miles and be like, I can't hang out with you. I'm out of state.
And no one would question it. They would think you went back home to Pennsylvania to visit your parents or something.
Right.
Like they wouldn't be like, oh, you're in Keene.
Wouldn't even
So you're down by the river?
I'm on the Connecticut River, and they'd be like, oh, so like New Haven. Yeah, basically.
They're like, I can see you though. Yeah, I'm out of state though.
No, I'm having pizza in New Haven. I don't know who that guy is. Yeah, so the thing about that text actually having, was actually deeper than just like the fact that it was Keene, even though we got a lot of traction out of talking about Keene for the last 30 minutes or so. But was it?
There's people on Twitter who like occasionally click on our website, our podcast when it goes out.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're going to be like, what does this have to do with evangelicalism? And
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I think we mentioned...
Because the hashtags are always the same because I just cut and paste.
Yeah. We'll have to switch the hashtags. But...
Sounds complicated.
Yeah, it does sound really complicated. I'm an elder millennial. I don't know anything about technology. Yeah, so the thing that struck me about John sending me that text about that story is like how happy it made me.
Yeah.
Like he could have texted, I don't think somebody could have texted me, hey Matt, you won $1 million, which first of all, I wouldn't have believed, but you get the point here. Like, and I think I would have been happier with John's story.
I don't know. I'd be pretty happy with $1 million.
Yeah.
Except you'd have to spend 40% windfall tax. So.
Yeah, exactly. That would be my first thought. I'd be like, don't ever text me again, Drew Carey. But I was just surprised at like how happy it made me. And there was the part of me was like, wow, and this is what I wrote on my Facebook, like hope is cheap.
Yeah. Like
how easy is it to access? And then at the same time I thought, well, maybe it's more like how nightmarish is life? Like real life. Yeah. That like this kind of stuff can make you happy. But the thing was, it's not the same thing as getting on your phone and watching a hilarious YouTube video. It's not the same thing as like an entertaining 2-minute TikTok or whatever. Like it was like, I love that this happened and I will always love that this happened. Yeah. And the fact that you texted it to me made me feel like it happened to me and us. Right. It wasn't something I was viewing. There was no voyeurism in it. Right. It was just like...
It was an experience.
It was like people being people is actually... Even the stuff that seems mundane, that's the stuff that can be encouraging. It doesn't have to be, oh, I heard this story. It doesn't have to be a human interest story.
Right. Or
like super sentimental. It can just be like, wow, that lifted me up. That got me through to lunch on a Wednesday. It was just knowing that Steve and Bill were listening to Gloria Estefan.
While cussing each other out.
And I'll never know, and I don't want to know, like, if Steve was really mad at Bill. Or...
If that's just how they love each other.
What they do.
Yeah.
They listen to Gloria Estefan, and they're like, F you. Politically incorrect term following.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was at the Jeff, often during prep and cleanup, so during service there was no music allowed, which was nice because you could hear each other. But sometimes during prep or cleanup, someone would put on music, and it was typically like Tool, Slayer, Motorhead, like what you think of when you think of like 30-year-old kitchen people with tattoos, prison records, and like too many scars from touching hot stuff. And then every now and again, this guy Walker like would put on like dance music, and like the whole kitchen would break out.
Like there was early '90s dance music,
like African dance music, like Brazilian samba, like stuff with like languages we didn't know. Like, how did you find this? He was like, I don't know. When I went to Tibet, I met the Sherpa, and he like gave me the CD, so I burned it. And,
that sounds like a Simpsons episode.
He really did go to Tibet. And one of the Facebook memories that popped up a few days ago that I didn't share because it has a guy in it who I'm not super fond of anymore. But it was all of us like grinding on each other, like listening to this African music because our dish pick guy, Mohammed, was from Nigeria and like, you know, immigrated over and just like worked in the dish pit. And he was like a hard worker, but he also like had some really weird food things. But he was like, I'm not even going to try to imitate his accent because it would sound like really like that would be what gets us in trouble in 10 years. But, you know, a stereotypical, very thick Nigerian accent was like, can I put on some of my music? Uh-huh. And we're like, sure. And he was always like very reserved. And then he puts on this like African tribal Nigerian like celebratory music. And dude, the guy got down. Uh-huh. And especially him being Muslim, he did have some hangups of like touching people and like eating pork. And like the music came on, he was like a different person. He was like legit like smacking people's butts and like it was just like it was like one of those moments where like, you know, we got through this, like, I'm sure it was a really stressful kitchen service and, like, sweating our asses off and just wanted to get out of there because we wanted to just clean and go home because we were exhausted. And instead we had, like, a dance party for 5 minutes and then, like, put back on Slayer and, like, finished cleaning and went home.
That's the thing about music is it does that.
Yeah.
It brings people in the community together, but it also... it loosens us. It's like alcohol or something.
Yeah.
Like even at church, like the way people sing at church. Mm-hmm. You know, especially if the music is a certain kind, like modern worship music, not hymns. You just wouldn't. It's basically a concert. There are churches that are basically concerts. Like you just wouldn't act like that, even if that song that song came on in Target. You wouldn't be like raising my hands.
Well, and you know, there are occasionally Christian bands that cross over into the mainstream. Like, was that I can like
Switchfoot?
Yeah, and like POD, but I'm thinking more of there was that female artist who like a few years back had that huge single that I'm sure was played in every single church. It was also on the radio.
Oh yeah. You
know what I'm talking about? Her name, yeah. Like I can like almost hear it in my head, but I can't.
Yeah. Laura?
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah.
But the song is Oceans, right? That you're talking about?
I don't think so.
Okay. Never mind.
It's the one where it's... Shoot.
Everybody listening right now is like knows exactly what we're talking about. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah. You can get this. You can do it. But anyway, like I'm willing to put all my assets on the fact that multiple churches in the evangelical realm sang her song on Sunday. Yeah. And people had their arms up and their eyes closed and were swaying. And again, it was also playing in Target and Walmart. Right. I feel like very few of them like...
Right. Yeah, they weren't like standing in line like thinking about whether they were going to get Wrigley's or whatever. We're doing a lot of product placement on this episode.
Because the prices right now.
Yeah. You know, and then all of a sudden that song comes on and they're like, hold up.
Yeah.
And everybody behind him has to wait.
Right. And I want to say it's like You Say, but then I get the Lisa Loeb song and I'm like, no, that's not it.
We'll figure it out.
We will. It'll be in the next episode.
It ought to be the title.
It'll be the title of the episode.
It'll be just like that girl that did that thing, that Christian crossover, Lauren Daigle or Daigle.
Yes. I don't know the name of it.
Do you pronounce it Daigle or Daigle? I don't know.
But yes, that song.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, because I know a lot of Christians too who thought there was that other female artist. I'm not batting 1,000 here today. I actually woke up relatively early in a good mood too, so there's no reason for my brain fog. You're beautiful, you know, like the stars and you're beautiful. I'm an awful singer, so I apologize to everyone. And it's like,
oh yeah.
The premise is like there's a girl who's cutting and like don't you know you're beautiful and like don't compare yourself to model, don't, and then there's like there's like a line about how like God or something and people are like, oh my gosh, she's a Christian artist, and she's like, I'm not gonna say no, but because like these Christians are buying my album, but I'm not like.
Oh yeah. She's gonna be like, no, I'm a Democrat. Plummets her sales on one side of the thing.
Alicia something, not Alicia Keys. Alicia, anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
But again, like with the music moving people, like they're not acting the same way,
Right.
And I don't think Mohammed outside of that dish pit that night,
Right.
like I'm sure he dances like that, but had we put it on in Target, he's not going to start grinding up on
Right.
the cashier and smacking their butt.
Right.
But he was so comfortable enough to do it with line pit people at 11 p.m.
Right.
After a 10-hour shift of being in the weeds the entire time. Losing 20 pounds to steam and
yeah. And to me, when people say worship, it's weird that's what I think of. I think of people like in another space.
Grinding?
Not grinding. But yeah, I think grinding is a form of worship. That's actually what I'm saying. It's like, whether it be a dance club or a church on Sunday morning or whatever, like you go to a particular place where you cannot act like you normally act. And it's socially accepted. It's like, you don't go to the dance club not to dance.
Right.
But objectively speaking, dancing's kind of hilarious. Like if you just take as far bird's eye view as you can.
Yeah.
You didn't know anything about, human beings, and you were an alien studying human beings for the first time. You'd be like, oh, like after the sun goes down, they just start tweaking.
It's true. I embarrassed Sarah 1 year into our marriage, the most I think I've ever embarrassed her by dancing. But we were at a dispatch show, and it was the last dispatch show that they were supposed to ever have. It was like their retirement tour, and they were at the Half Shell in Boston, and they expected like 15,000 people, and something like 100,000 showed up. It shut down Storrow Drive. And so I was hippie dancing because I used to go to festivals, and and she was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Dancing to Dispatch," and she's like super embarrassed because she hadn't been to these things before, and I'm like, do you see the 100,000 other people?
Yeah, you're like the only one not doing it. You're the weirdo.
Yeah.
I'm not.
But she was like mortified that I'm like, I'm doing like the whole hand thing and like my eyes are closed and I'm swaying. I'm like, yeah, man. Like, and at that point I wasn't doing drugs, but
yeah. You're like, I'm embarrassed that you're just standing there.
Yeah, I was like, what are you doing?
Why are you? Yeah.
But yeah, if I saw someone with their eyes closed and their hands up, like swaying in the town common, I'd be like, is that person okay? But even now as an atheist, if I walked into any church and I saw it, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense.
Right. Right. Well, you do from time to time see people just randomly by themselves swaying, but yeah, you would think.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's weird.
Is that person okay? And you kind of know that they're not.
Yeah.
But even, it just occurred to me, like, even because sometimes churches will do this thing where they'll hold a prayer service or they'll hold a worship service, like on the common.
Yeah.
On the town common.
We did that.
They'll do it like in person, and it's weird.
Yeah.
Especially like if you do it just in the middle of the day and you walk by, and at first you think it's kind of a protest, and if it was, like, for some reason, that wouldn't be weird. Like, you would notice, you'd be like, oh, I wonder what they're protesting, but you wouldn't be like, we gotta get out of here. Like, there was a group, speaking of this, like Keene, which they have a First Friday gallery walk, which a lot of small New England towns do, like First Friday art gallery walks. Brattleboro's having one tomorrow night. But there was a Christian group playing like early 2000s Chris Tomlin kind of worship songs.
Nice.
Matt Redman. And they weren't good, and they were probably like in their 50s.
Sweet Jesus Christ, my...
Yeah, they were probably like in their 50s, and like they were inviting people to, like, they were openly inviting people to join them from the street, as if like a random person from Keene would know
Tomlin's mystery.
Yeah. And it was just really, really weird.
Come on, God of our city, guys, you know this one.
The God of our city is Bill, and he needs to get this shovel. He needs to stop what he's doing and pick up this shovel. But if you put that setting in a church on a Sunday morning, so what's the equivalent? Like, if the local local club said, we're not going to do our dance thing at like 11 in the morning, we're bringing it to First Friday, like 7 at night.
See, so I don't know if it's something about worship or not, because I can actually think of other clubs like the like Flintstones version of the Elks Club where they wear crazy hats.
Oh yeah.
Like if
I was
they were,
but yeah.
But like I have another memory of in Amherst where I was at the bar with Jeppy. We had like just finished cooking, and it was like 7-8 p.m. and an Irish like dance club came in and legit had like bagpipes and flutes and just started Irish jigging in the bar. And it was the most magical thing.
Like a flash mob?
Yeah. And I was like, this is amazing. What's going on?
Yeah. Yeah, I had a flash mob experience in Brattleboro. Not like a big one like you see on YouTube, but like these guys that came into town to do a cappella. I think they were doing a cappella at the theater that night. They just said, why don't we start doing stuff in the co-op and see what happens? See if they kick us out or if people stop and listen. So one guy stands up, he's like the tenor, and he just starts singing, and everyone's like... I think because he was dressed the way he was, people, as soon as he started singing, were like, oh, we're about to experience a flash mob. Right? Because he's wearing like a bow tie. It's he's not, he's not in shabby clothes. It's like... He's not crazy.
He's not naked walking down the street covered.
Right. So we're just like waiting around there, but waiting for the other guy to stand up and harmonize. And of course that all happens and we're all into it. And I remember being like, I wonder where ownership is at with this. Cause like on one hand you're thinking, why are you giving a free concert in my store?
Yeah.
And on the other hand, you're like, all my customers are loving this.
Right. It's whimsical.
So, yeah.
So the only time I think worship is acceptable outside, which sounds ridiculous, but I'll explain in a minute, is like sunrise Easter services. Mm-hmm. Like even when I wasn't a Christian, I kind of like knew that, like, and maybe it was just because my town, like all the churches got together, or at least all the Protestant churches got together.
Yeah.
And they were like, we're going to do this thing at 5:30 in the morning. And I'm like, cool, I'm going to be asleep.
Right.
But you're kind of like, oh yeah, like this is your big day. I get it. Mm-hmm. So I think like so we did our sunrise service we did outside on the town common, and we invited other churches, and before Vita Nova did it, like a lot of other churches like would head the reins, so to speak, who were all in the same sort of theological camp. And I wonder if like it's different when it's worship, is because like everyone's down with music. Even if you don't like a certain genre of music, you're not like, I'm against music.
Right.
But like when it comes down to worship, you're like, well, that's like your thing. And especially in America, we're like you keep your things private and I'll keep my things private.
Yeah.
Which is why like we did evangelism early on as a church plant. We went on a mission trip to another part of the country and straight up knocked on people's doors, like Jehovah's Witness style. And that was like the most awkward thing I think I've ever experienced.
Yeah. I've never done that.
Yeah, don't. It's awful.
I think that I've knocked on people's doors and invited them to a thing, like a block party. Like I've done that, which was an evangelistic endeavor.
Right, but I've never... you weren't, like the block party was where they'd be evangelized.
Right.
And you're like, hey, we're having a party. There's going to be like food and drink and a bounce house, and maybe a speaker at the end.
Right.
But like you can leave at any time. Like,
yeah. But I've never just done Jehovah's Witness style.
Yeah, it was an experience.
Yeah, I bet. I've done plenty of like cold turkey, like street witnessing.
Yeah, I mean
like that.
It's similar, except you're at someone's house, which is like even more invasive because it's like their territory.
Like street witnessing, it depends on when and where you do it. Like if you do it in a super commercial part of town, like where people, like they're at Target to shop at Target, or they're at McDonald's to eat. If you do it in those places, it'll come off as like you're just interrupting my day.
Right.
But I still don't hate street witnessing, even as a whatever kind of Christian I am, and I'm not saying that I do it all the time, but like I'll tell you when to do it is do it on a random weeknight downtown. People are off of work, and some of those people downtown are lonely and looking for a conversation.
Yeah.
And as long as you don't press it too hard in terms of like, as long as it's not a sales pitch and you're just walking up to somebody and you're like, hey, let's have a life conversation.
Yeah.
People are into that more than you might think.
Yeah.
I mean if
that's
if
why
you're clearly trying to proselytize and they pick up on that, right. They check out. But if you're like,
when they're
hey,
just
man,
a number and a
right.
thing for you to check off, but when they're like, hey, you care about me.
Yeah. They're like, hey man, I see you just walking around, like, what do you think about it could be anything, and it's weird to think about it, but actually people are really into that stuff. Like, and when I think about, sometimes I may be wandering around a place downtown and I got nothing to do. I'm just on my way from one coffee shop to another to read a book, which I don't do as a dad anymore. This is more like me in my 20s. Like, I don't have many of those opportunities. Yeah. But I remember when those were the days, from going from this coffee shop to that coffee shop with a book in my hand. I wouldn't have minded if somebody came up to me and was like, hey, so what do you think about the difference between Aristotle and Plato? I'd have been like, let's have this conversation right now. Or if they'd been like, what do you think about like the history of Christianity? I'd have been like, yes, please let's talk about this. But if they would have come up to me and been like, hey, if you were to die today, are you 100% sure that you go to heaven? I'd be like, no, and don't talk to me. Because those are
and if they handed you a chick tract.
Right, because one is like an invitation to a conversation, saying that I really want to hear what you have to say, and the other is, but people are, I think, way too quick to knock street evangelism, and I get why. And I don't even know that what I would do, I would necessarily call well, I might call it evangelism, but it's not. Like, I genuinely care about what the other person has to say. I genuinely view it as a conversation. It's similar to what we're doing on this podcast.
You know, on some level, everyone cares, but yes, like, when you look at the history of evangelism in the New Testament, at least, Paul's like, his heart's breaking for these people.
Yeah.
Right? So he's like, let me tell you what I have, because I want you to have what I have.
Yeah. Right.
He's not like, I need more people in church, or this is like something I have to do to get in heaven, or like, here's my track. Like, pastor told me, like, this is what makes a good Christian. Yeah.
Also, Paul, if you're reading closely, he shows up and speaks publicly at places where it's normal to do that.
Right.
So he goes to synagogues, and people, that's synagogue culture in the first century. It's like, this guy's speaking at synagogue today.
Yeah.
Let's hear what he has to say. Yeah. Like, a crowd is gathering to hear something interesting or new, or like, well, not new necessarily in synagogue, but that's the way it was like in Athens in Greek.
Right.
Like when Paul did the thing on
Mars Hill.
At Mars Hill, like he was doing something that was socially acceptable. He wasn't going way outside the social norms. Right. So there are places in whatever town, USA, that you're at. I think it's actually easier in New England, where it's not culturally Christian, where like it's the public sphere and people expect that conversation to happen. Like one time I didn't get the gig, but I applied to do a TED Talk at the local community college. Because they just put it out. They were like, we're doing TED Talks. We're going to do 5 people, whatever topic you want to do, you want to do it. And I was like, so that's the opportunity to be like, hey, that's a real evangelism opportunity. Yeah. Where people, if you, because they read it and they go, oh, Matt Miller's talking forth, and he's talking about the church in the first century. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to be like, oh, I'm being proselytized.
Right.
Oh,
I got
tricked. Right. Yeah. This guy's talking about what he said he's going to talk about. Yeah. Directly. And so looking for those spaces where that's acceptable. And one of those, interestingly enough, is sometimes talking to a random person that's got nothing to do in a bar on a Wednesday night.
Right.
It's not just...
Which is maybe why door-to-door seems so strange, because it's just not an American thing. Like, You don't know your neighbors.
Especially not a Northeastern thing. Like, especially not that. You're like...
And maybe, like, that worked in the 40s and 50s when, like, not everyone had a telephone and markets were closed on Sundays. So if you needed a cup of sugar...
Yeah.
Like, you need to go to Mary Jones down the way.
Right. Well, especially that we have text machines now.
Yeah.
You can just be like, hey, I need something. Can I come over in 20 minutes?
Right. Also, everything's open. Like, there's no blue laws anymore.
Right.
Right? So it used to be like Sunday, if you didn't have your stuff, you were screwed in New England. Like, I remember, like, Sundays, like, places being ghost towns.
Right.
Like, there was nothing to do.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, they're like, all right, movie theaters can be open. And you're like, oh, man, movie theaters on Sundays.
Whoa.
And then they were like, stores can be open. And you're like, whoa. I can go to the supermarket on Sunday, but you can't buy beer or cigarettes.
But you go to the supermarket and buy milk.
Yeah. So, like, back in those days, like, if there was more of a culture potentially, so, you know, maybe door-to-door evangelism was a thing in the 50s that just died with the black and white television.
If you knock on my door or ring my doorbell, I assume it's an emergency.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even like...
In 2022.
Like, even, like, political candidates are, like, canvassing and mass purg and solar panel people, and I'm just like, you're an annoyance. Like, even, like, the people, they're like, and I'm like, I'm already voting for your candidate. Like, get off my lawn. What? Like, does this actually work? Like, is anyone like, oh, I didn't know about this new candidate. Please explain to me their principles and priorities. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Like, there's the internet. Right. And at least Belchertown sends out a voter guide beforehand, laying out, like, each person, how long they've served, if they've served, their party affiliation, their website.
Yeah.
I'm like, why are you on my... And then the solar panel people, we're probably going to wrap up. I have solar panels. We've had 3 solar panel companies come by in the 3 years we've lived here. And I'm like, we have solar panels on our house. And they're like, oh, we didn't see that. I'm like, really? You're like the worst salesman ever.
Yeah.
It's like your job is to be observant.
I had a guy come to my house. Yeah, we do need to wrap up.
No, that's fine.
I had a guy come to my, like, knock on my door. This was a few years ago. Open the door, and he has a T-shirt on, and it reads, "Hell is real." And before he could get a word out, I was just like, yeah, tell me about it. And I was like, I thought if I had to do it over again, I'd have been like, hell is real? For sure it is. Here's some Narcan. Why don't you just make a trip downtown?
Yeah.
And, because I agree with you. Hell is real. And why are you here telling me that?
Yeah, it'll be another conversation. We had Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons in our house a lot when I was an evangelical pastor because I would, like, purposely invite them in, and it was fun times. They stopped coming. The Jehovah's Witnesses at least stopped coming, and I would see them continue to go to other houses. And, like, my house must have been marked as, like, don't come here anymore. Because I would get people questioning because I was, like, well versed enough in the Bible. I'd be like, well, what about this? I'd be like, I don't know. I got to go ask the elder. I'm like, or we could flip over to 2 Timothy.
Yeah. Cliffhanger, because I got some stories about Mormons coming to my house too.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. If you like the episode, like, comment, share. New coffee, not so great, but it's part of why we do this.
Thanks, Nate.